Welcome back to another UCL Fantasy video and podcast. This will be the best team for match day 10, and this will be perfect for those wildcarding or using free transfers, possibly taking a hit, as we've got 2 free transfers at our disposal for the second leg of the knockout playoff rounds, and you don't have to worry about the round of 16 and beyond, because we get unlimited transfers for match day 11, so you can't play the wildcard or Limitless in that particular match day. Check out all of my content like the chip strategy guide and the best Limitless team, which is already out on the channel, and coming soon will be the team selection, where I've got the wildcard available and 2 free transfers, and it will all culminate in the Tuesday deadline stream where I answer all of the UCL fantasy questions, so you're well prepared for match day 10 and for the rest of the season. But all our focus will be on the knockout playoff rounds, because like I said, we can navigate future match days with unlimited transfers. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. If you enjoy my content, I promise to get this to a 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals. We're very close towards 32,000 subscribers, which we will achieve by the Tuesday deadline stream. Check all the links in the description below for my Patreon, the Championships, Discord server, UCL Fantasy League, Twitter, Instagram and Blue Sky, and thank you very much for your support. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. My squad value is 107 million overall, and some of you watching might have even more at your disposal. Others will be struggling a little bit to build this exact 15-man squad, but I will discuss the best players from each team and also in each position, because there are other areas and maybe other players to look at who are differential, so to speak. In my best Limitless team, I discussed a lot of expensive and template picks, but there were some differentials in there, and in this video, there will be even more low-owned players that will help you push up the ranks and get top spot in your mini leagues, and also get to the really top echelons of UCL Fantasy. Let's start off with the 2 goalkeepers, but I would recommend 4 overall to pick from, and then it's up to you who you go for. Manuel Neuer is the best goalkeeper on the Tuesday in my opinion, although there is a very close runner-up in Trubin. Those are the 2 I'd be looking at for the Tuesday, and I ultimately would lean towards Manuel Neuer. And you can still cover Benfica defensively, as I'll show you very soon, in a sort of different way. And if you want to double up on any team on the Tuesday, Bayern Munich would be my preference. They've got plenty of decent options in the defensive line, and Manuel Neuer had a great performance over the weekend in a goalless draw against Bayer Leverkusen, and Bayern Munich were really under the cosh there. They only had 2 shots themselves, and Bayer Leverkusen had 5 big chances, which was met by Neuer making 5 saves, and he was just putting in a top performance, rolling back the years, as he is one of the best goalkeepers of all time. So I would go for Neuer, despite some mishaps in the Champions League this season, and he's no longer the same goalkeeper he once was, but he is still one of the better goalkeepers you'll see, and I think in UCL Fantasy, he's number 1 on the Tuesday. But for the Wednesday matches, it's always important to have that sort of option to substitute just in case, and it maximizes your points potential. I would go for cCaFxb, despite the fact that he missed match day 9 due to a fever. He made that squad against Club Brugge in that 2-1 defeat, and he also featured in a goalless draw, just like Manuel Neuer this weekend. Atalanta aren't in great form, only 3 wins out of the last 10 matches, and they are trailing in this knockout playoff round against Club Brugge, but they would be heavy favourites to turn things around in Italy, and Rui Patricio will not start. He is a 4 million goalkeeper, and he offered great value in match day 9, but it will be cCaFxb between the sticks. If you want to go in a different direction, then Donnarumma, who kept a clean sheet back in match day 9 against Brest, will be another top choice. But my favourite goalkeepers are Neuer and cCaFxb. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Hakimi is the top scoring defender in UCL Fantasy from those players available in the knockout playoff rounds with 64 points. He's got the assist potential, and he got one against Brest in the last game, and he's been very consistent in the Champions League. He has scored a goal from outside the box in this competition, and even against the likes of Man City, he posed them all sorts of problems and had a goal disallowed only a couple of weeks ago. But Hakimi, I think, is one of the best wing-backs in Europe, and PSG are in fine form with 9 victories out of the last 10 matches, and they're unbeaten since late November when they fell to Bayern Munich by a 1-0 scoreline. So PSG are very competitive, and they've really turned things around under Luis Enrique, and I think a double up in the Parisians defensively could really work out for you. So Donnarumma between the sticks, as I mentioned before, could still work very nicely, and you've got the likes of William Baccio, Marquinhos and Nuno Mendes. All of them are great UCL Fantasy options. William Baccio has 71 ball recoveries this season, but unfortunately, he didn't make a single one against Brest in match day 9, and Nuno Mendes made 8 ball recoveries of his own, and he's got the attacking potential to possibly rival Hakimi, but I think the Moroccan is the best PSG defender overall. Let's now go to another defender who did very well in match day 9, and that's Gatti, who got 11 points despite Juventus conceding to PSV, and he got player of the match and multiple ball recoveries, and he was in my own team until the deadline stream in the last couple of minutes. I shouldn't have sold him, and he's by far the best Juventus asset across all positions, and I'd much rather go for him over Di Gregorio between the sticks, but I don't think it's a terrible option. By the way, the 4.2 million goalkeeper, but Gatti offers much better value despite being more expensive at 5 million. Let's now go to some other defenders, and this will get very interesting, but I am forming another defensive double up here with Kim Min-jae, and I think Bayern Munich can keep a clean sheet at the Allianz against Celtic, and they've also been in fine form with 8 wins out of the last 10 matches, and just a 1 loss in that time frame, and they got that really important draw against Bayer Leverkusen. They're in full control of the Bundesliga title race with an 8-point lead at the top, and Kim Min-jae was rested with a full rest, by the way. He wasn't even substituted on against Celtic, but I would expect him to start in the second leg, and I think that partnership with Upamecano has been very impressive in the last couple of months, but there is the possibility that we could see rotation. Maybe, for example, Eric Dyer comes in for Upamecano, because both centre-halves, Upamecano and Kim Min-jae, were actually rotation risks ahead of that Matchday 9 game, and as a result, Kim Min-jae was left on the bench, but I don't see that being the case for Kim Min-jae specifically in the upcoming match days, but you might have a different opinion, and I completely understand that. As for Atalanta, I still think a defensive double-up could work this time out, and Zappacosta is my favourite defender, and I would be more bullish on Atalanta with some major players returning, including Kolasinac and Lookman. Both of them took part in full training on the Sunday, and that would be a massive boost for Atalanta. And you might be asking, what does Kolasinac returning mean for Jimitsi and Hain? Not so much in particular. When Kolasinac was starting, it was a back three of all of them, Kolasinac, Jimitsi and Hain, and it was actually the likes of Posh and a few other centre-backs here and there who would drop to the bench, because that is ultimately Atalanta's first-choice defensive line, and you would have the likes of Zappacosta and Bellanova as the wing-backs, but Zappacosta got a full rest this weekend in that goalless draw, and I think he's well poised to start and possibly make an impact in Matchday 10. He got an assist against Club Brugge despite that defeat in Belgium. But to complete this defensive line, I am going for a differential. I think it's about time to include some Benfica players, and Otamendi has been a solid UCL fantasy option over the years, and he always churns out ball recoveries. He got 10 points overall back in Matchday 9, and Benfica got another win against Monaco, but it's worth mentioning that their opponents, the French outfit, got a 7-1 win this weekend, so maybe they're finding a bit of form and confidence going to Portugal, so it might be a bit more difficult than expected. And when you are defending a lead, it can be a bit awkward, and sometimes your defensive approach can backfire. But I still like Trubin in goal and also Otamendi to cover that Benfica defence. They've got multiple injuries of their own, but you would expect Benfica to go through to the next round. The most in-form attacker across Europe is undoubtedly Ousmane Dembele, with 15 goals in this calendar year, in just 10 matches, by the way. It's a ridiculous record. He scored a brace against Brest to make it 7 goals against them across 3 matches this season, and he's well poised to do it again on Wednesday night. He only came on as a substitute in a 1-0 win for PSG over this weekend, as they remain 10 points clear of Marseille in Ligue 1. They've got a fantastic record in the French division, and they're showing consistency across all competitions, and Dembele for me is a level above Gonzalo Ramos, Kvaratskhelia and Barcola. If you are looking to double up on the PSG attack, that's still viable, but Dembele is undoubtedly the one you want to go for. He is much better than the rest. I think Hakimi is the second best PSG option overall, and then you can triple up with another defender or Donnarumma in goal. I don't even mind a quadruple PSG setup for Matchday 10, but if you are going for that sort of structure, Dembele has to be in your team. Now, the next midfielder has been in relatively poor form over the last 10 matches, a lot of injury problems in the last couple of months as well, but Christian Pulisic will feature because I think one AC Milan attacker is viable against one of the worst defences, if not the worst, left in the competition. Feyenoord kept a clean sheet in Matchday 9 with that 1-0 victory, but they've conceded so many goals across the league phase, and you would expect AC Milan to make a comeback, even if it goes all the distance to extra time and penalties. I think Pulisic could be heavily involved, and he's got a solid home record, especially in the Champions League this season, and it was kind of put to a halt because of injuries. You might point towards Rafael Leao, who did very well as a substitute in the 1-0 win this weekend, and there are a few other options like Santiago Jimenez, who got the winning goal actually, and he's facing his former club, and you would expect him to have a say in this tie, but ultimately I'd go for Pulisic. Reinders isn't too shabby either. In fact, he's got more points than Pulisic so far this season, but the American remains my favourite AC Milan option. If you want to go somewhere else, I don't mind Bakayoko, especially to cover PSV. He's by far the best option they have to offer, despite the benching in the first leg. And from Feyenoord, it was Igor Paxao who scored the winning goal in the Champions League, and he's got some big returns in this competition, so you might want to go for him instead. I honestly wouldn't mind a differential in place of Pulisic, so let me know down in the comment section below if you are looking to maybe offload the American or just look in a different direction. But next up will be more of a template pick in Jamal Musiala, who only has 2 goals in the last 10 matches, but so does Elise. Neither have really staked a claim in terms of goal contributions on a regular basis, but Elise has played very well recently, so you might want to go for him over Musiala. That is almost a 50-50 call. I believe Elise has 2 assists in that time frame of the last 10 matches, and Musiala has 1, so there's literally not much in it between both of them, but Musiala costs a lot more, so it does make it more accessible going for Michael Elise, who scored the opening goal at Celtic Park, on course for that 2-1 victory for Bayern Munich. You might even want to go for both of them at the same time, but it would mean no Harry Kane up front or removing one of Neuer or Kim Min-jae. It's worth bearing that in mind. You can only pick 4 players from the same club at this stage of the competition, and that will change as we progress through the Champions League, and it's all covered in my How to Play UCL Fantasy Guide and also the chip strategy video which I published this season. Next up is an injury doubt going into Matchday 10, and he has missed the last couple of games for Atalanta, but he would be a massive boost if he does return to that starting 11, and that's Lookman, who has been brilliant all season. Even off the bench in a recent Champions League game, he made all the difference, and he just has that special something. He can dribble past players, take them on, create opportunities, and score plenty of goals as well. He's got 3 goals in the last 10 matches, but that has been kind of halted because of injuries and other circumstances, but I would back him to be the best Atalanta attacker, even over Retegui, the top scorer in Serie A with 20 goals, and De Ketelaere, who is a very decent choice up front, and he offers fantastic value at around 5.7 million. But in the case of Lookman, is 6.7 million. That is still phenomenal value, and I think he's the best Atalanta midfielder by some distance. But let's complete this midfield with a player who was sent off this weekend, and he scored the winning goal in a 3-2 thriller against Man City, and that's Jude Bellingham. Now, he could actually face a 4-match ban in La Liga, but that all depends on the referee report. We had that kind of controversial decision there, but Bellingham is well poised for some returns against Man City. Now, you could say he was a bit fortunate and he didn't do much across the game, but he's a man of big moments, and he has scored so many late winners for Real Madrid in the last year, and he had that phenomenal patch when he first started with Los Merengues, and now you're seeing a lot of consistency from him with the goals and the assists as well. If you want to cover Real Madrid defensively, take your pick. Mbappe has 11 goals in the last 10 matches. He scored this weekend in that 1-1 draw against Osasuna. Vinicius Jr. has been struggling in La Liga, but he's doing it on a regular basis in the Champions League. Rodrigo can score many clutch goals, and he's done it so many times against Manchester City. And you've also got some defenders to consider. You could say, as Rudiger and Alaba will be in the squad to face Man City this week, but you got Courtois in goal. I ultimately would avoid all Real Madrid and Man City defenders and focus on the midfielders and forwards. If you are looking for a massive differential up front, I think Pavlidis could be a fantastic choice. He has 7 goals in the last 8 matches with 2 assists. Now, he did blank this week with Benfica getting a 1-0 win as they're closing in on Sporting at the top of the Portuguese league, but Pavlidis has shown a lot of consistency recently, which a lot of Benfica fans have been crying out for. I think generally speaking, throughout his time there, he has struggled to really find the net on a regular basis, but he's doing it now, and that includes the Champions League. He has played Monaco twice this season, with Benfica coming out on top on both occasions, and Pavlidis scored in both matches. So going into the home tie, despite the fact that Monaco scored 7 goals this weekend, they went 1-0 down to begin with, and I think Pavlidis will have plenty of chances to score some goals there. Next up, though, is a template pick with Harry Kane, and you might want to diversify things a little bit in certain areas. So, for example, instead of Bellingham, you might want to go for an ultimate differential like Kokchu, for example, and maybe cover Benfica offensively in that direction, or double up on the Portuguese outfit. But Harry Kane has been brilliant all season for Bayern Munich. He averages a goal per game basically, and he can also get assists. And in the Champions League, he hasn't been great, but he scored against Celtic, and you're just hoping for a higher ceiling now with a goal and an assist in the same match, or perhaps a brace, maybe even a hat-trick coming up very soon. And I think Celtic at home is a great opportunity, despite their brilliant form in their domestic league with 8 wins out of the last 11 matches. But with Celtic, they have struggled in the Champions League, especially from a defensive perspective. And Bayern Munich are one of the most informed teams across Europe. They're set to win the Bundesliga title if they don't mess things up towards the end. And in the Champions League, they would be one of the heavy favourites should they go through. But let's complete this team with one of the best players in the Champions League over the last couple of years, and that's Vinicius Jr. But in terms of overall form, it is Kylian Mbappe who, like I said, has 11 goals in the last 10 matches, and Vinicius has been really poor in La Liga, in my opinion, and ever since he's returned from suspension, Real Madrid are winless in the Spanish division, but he is still a brilliant player, especially in this competition where he gets goals and assists so regularly. In fact, he's got 7 goals and 3 assists in the Champions League this season, but you've got so many options up front, and you can't cover them all, as I always say on this channel. But the beauty of UCL Fantasy is we've got so many different options in each position, especially in the forward line. Gyökeres started on Saturday in a 2-2 draw for Sporting, and he got an assist. Guirassy missed 3 big chances in a 2-0 loss against Bochum, and you've got so many more where that came from. You might be tempted by Kolo Muani, who's been brilliant for Juventus since joining. He plays Inter Milan tonight, and we'll see how they get on. And of course, he blanked for the first time for Juventus in Matchday 9, but I wouldn't be looking at Kolo Muani at the moment. I think Gyökeres and Guirassy would be the 2 main outsiders to this forward line. And you might be looking at Man City with Erling Haaland, who got an assist in a 4-0 win over Newcastle. And there was an injury scare. The same goes for Mbappe, but both of them should be available for this week in the Champions League. And it was Marmoush who scored a hat-trick to announce himself as a Manchester City player against a fairly decent team in Newcastle, by the way. So there are so many different choices up front, but I think Pavlidis, Kane and Vinicius are amongst the very best. And if you've got enough money, I think Guirassy in for Pavlidis could work very well. But let's not forget, you also want a few differentials to maybe go up in your mini leagues and also increase your rankings as well and go into the top echelons of UCL Fantasy. But let's talk about the captaincy now to wrap things up. And on the Tuesday, there are many different choices on both days, but I would favour Harry Kane at home to Celtic. He's a template pick, I get that, and you might want to go a bit different with Pavlidis, for example, or a mega differential. But with the captaincy, I'd stick with Harry Kane personally. I think he'll score the most points. Otherwise, I wouldn't recommend him. As for the Wednesday, it would be Ousmane Dembele, who has 7 goals in 3 matches against Brest, and he's also got the most goals of any player in 2025. He missed multiple big chances in Matchday 9, but he eventually got on the score sheet and made it a very big return for those that captained him on the Tuesday. So that would be my captaincy plans. Lookman isn't guaranteed to start, by the way, so you might want to go in a different direction. And as I mentioned earlier, Igor Paxao and maybe Bakayoko will be fantastic differentials on paper, and they're my favourite options from PSV and Feyenoord, so that is definitely something to look at. And in the defensive line, Schlotterbeck is still a solid choice. Despite the fact that Borussia Dortmund have 3 wins out of the last 10 matches, they've got a 3-0 lead over Sporting, and they're now going at home to Signal Iduna Park, so they could still be heavy favourites to go through and maybe keep a clean sheet. Their focus will be on defending that lead, but sometimes that can go the other way. And let me know if there are any other players you would recommend. Of course, in goal, I also suggested Trubin and Donnarumma as alternatives. So I think these two, Neuer, Kanasecchi, and then of course Donnarumma and Trubin will be the top 4 goalkeepers in UCL Fantasy. And you want to ensure you've got one playing on the Tuesday and the other on the Wednesday. If you haven't joined my UCL Fantasy League, there is a link in the description below, and the league code is cCaFxb, which you can see on screen. It's very easy to join the UCL Fantasy League. I believe it's the biggest mini league in the world, so thank you to those that have joined. And there are many other links where that came from. But in terms of other players to consider, I'd always want to see your thoughts in the comment section and across all my social media platforms. Nuno Mendes perhaps as a defender, or just doubling up on PSG defensively. There are so many different ways of structuring your team, but what I've done in this video is highlight some differentials and other ways of targeting these upcoming fixtures and optimizing your squads for Matchday 10. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Our aim is to get this to a 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 32,000 subscribers. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, UCL Fantasy League, Spotify, and much more can be found in the description. I wish you all the best of luck for Matchday 10. Enjoy the football as always, and I'll see you on Tuesday for that deadline stream.